Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
In How to Cure a Fanatic, you revealed that as a child in Jerusalem, you were a little brainwashed fanatic. My question is, ultimately, what made you overcome that narrow-minded position? And do you believe that the cultural instruments that are necessary to achieve such growth are accessible also to the Palestinians? Thank you.
Yes. Well, as a child in Jerusalem, yes, I was a little fanatic. I was born to a very right-wing, militant family. The school taught me that we Israelis were 100% right and our enemies were 100% wrong. Moreover, my entire environment taught me that the whole world is always against us Jewish people and against us Israelis. We are alone in the world. We should stick together and march together to our destination. This was the right climate for a little fanatic. I was like a little exclamation mark as a child. In fact, the very first words I ever learned to say in English, except for yes and no, were the words, "British go home," which as a little boy I used to shout at the British patrols in Jerusalem. Jerusalem in the 1940s, when I was a little child, Jerusalem was under British administration. I used to shout, "British go home," and throw stones at the British patrols in Jerusalem. Again, because I was a little fanatic, because I was utterly convinced that we Israelis are right and everyone else is wrong or criminal or dangerous or just an enemy, a deadly enemy. Later on, when I became about 12 or so, I very much, through reading books, through reading good literature, I discovered certain relativism. I discovered that the world is not black and white, that the world is not always divided into good guys and bad guys. Also, through reading books, through reading novels, I learned how to imagine other people. And that brought me to ask myself the question, and I remember very vividly when I first asked myself the question, how would I feel if I were a Palestinian little boy? How would I feel then? Would I have the same opinions? Would I see the world in the same light? And I remember inside my head, I conducted arguments with little Palestinian boys of my age. I didn't have an opportunity to have such a real argument because we did not meet with Palestinians. There was no social contact. There was no direct contact. There was a language barrier. Palestinians spoke Arabic. Israelis spoke Hebrew. There was no common language. And even if there was a little common language, some English, we did not communicate. At that time, there were no ties between Israelis and Palestinians, none whatsoever. So inside my head, I discovered that I was conducting an argument with a Palestinian boy of my age. I invented him. I even gave him a name. And I invented his arguments. Now, to invent his arguments, I had to see his point of view. To see his point of view, I had to teach myself to see the world through his eyes. This cured me of my fanaticism, because I could suddenly see both ways. It didn't convince me that this Palestinian child was right. It didn't convince me that the Palestinian cause was right and the Israeli cause was wrong. But it taught me that there are two sides, that things are not black and white, that this is not a Hollywood film with good guys and bad guys. This is more complicated than that. This is how I was cured of my fanaticism. And later on, when I became 15, I rebelled against my father and against his world and decided to become everything my father was not. This was the final phase of my recovery from my young age fanaticism.